I'm Nathan Bynum, host of Youth Can Change the World. Last episode, I spoke with Brie Mathers, founder of Love the Skin You're In. She was brought to Arlington through the efforts of the Global Collab Network to give her talk, which has empowered young women in our schools to take care of themselves and each other, and to create a world where women's minds and imaginations are highly valued, and we can all love the skin we're in. During this episode, we will talk with 3 young women who were inspired by Brie's talk. Stay tuned to find out how youth are changing the world. Well, welcome everyone to Youth Can Change the World. This is my biggest crowd so far on the show, and I'm very excited. So, of course, we had Brie on a previous episode, and welcome back.
Thanks, Nathan.
And also, we have Leela and Avery and Ellen, and they all work with Brie, and they're also high school students or about to be high school students. And they were all present at one of Brie's inspirational talks about loving the skin that you're in. And they got further involved later on, and that talk inspired them to be doing some of the things they're doing now. So we are going to hear all about that. So I want you guys to take yourselves back to the moment when you first heard the talk, Love the Skin You're In. What was that week like for you? And what was that time in your life like? What was it like sitting in the audience and hearing the talk?
I think Ellen and I go to HB, and so the speech was actually, it was optional. So a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, we don't really want to go," like because they could have gone off to get Starbucks or something else. But I was like, "No, we should all go," because I had struggled my whole life with. I had dieted. I've been on Weight Watchers. I had done juicing cleanses, whatever. I've done it all. And so when I heard this talk coming, I was like, "No, we all need to hear it." And I didn't actually know what body positivity was, but I thought, might as well try it. Might as well get in there. And so we did, and it was very educational and until it turned emotional, and that's when I think it connected for a lot of girls, is when we put our hands together like this and we imagine our 5-year-old self in our palms, and we tell her how much we love her and how much we wish she wouldn't be so mean to herself. And I think that's when I started bawling, and I looked around and I saw all my friends that didn't seem so interested turned around and they all had tears coming down their face. So I think that was something that really touched us all and changed our mindsets in that moment. So
that was definitely the moment that swung me in the talk too. I kind of walked into it feeling pretty good actually, because I'd struggled some in the past, and I really felt like, oh, I overcame that. I'm totally better now, and I kind of walked in with this, oh, I'm just checking it out because why not? And, Brie is talking, and I'm like, yeah, this is cool, but it's nothing I don't know already. And then she's getting deeper, and it's that same moment when, everybody is just quiet, and you're holding your 5-year-old self, and I just started crying, and I looked around, everybody was just crying, and that was kind of the moment when it hit me.
I think it's just really crazy how you think that you know it all, you think that you've overcome it, and you see all your friends, but they're still doing some of the stuff that they say they won't. I'm not going to go on a diet, but they do, and they really haven't overcome it. So when we did go, I think everyone was just super into it because we all kind of realized, all my friends and everyone in the auditorium realized that we didn't overcome it and we still have time, and it's not just a 1 minute kind of thing. It's years even of a lot of going through yourself and self-cleansing and seeing how you are a good person and you're beautiful. So I appreciated it.
I think what's great about the talk too is that it did really kind of show us, or it showed me wow, I'm not really where I thought I was, but then it showed you you can accomplish this. You're not there yet, but you can do it.
I think that what she showed us all is that you have an option. You can sit back and kind of let society's ideals kind of tear you down and break you down, and let that idea and impossible standard kind of define you, or you can choose the route of body positivity and kind of, make that decision to put in the effort and, remind yourself that you're okay the way you are and that you're beautiful the way you are and that you don't need to, resign to being told that you aren't good enough.
Do you remember giving the talk at HP Woodlawn?
I do. I remember that talk and the talk at McLean. The talk at HP Woodlawn was particularly poignant. It was the week after the election, and there was just this tenor, and every talk kind of ends up carrying a different energy, because I think of it as like an infinity symbol that flows between me and the audience, and we were all just kind of reading one another, and everyone was broken open. I had tears in my eyes during that talk too. It was like we were all crying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember one part of it specifically where they were showing how magazines, Photoshop, and like even without the celebrities knowing it. And so, I mean, I feel like we all knew that, but we just kind of blew it off. But really, it has a big effect on you, because you go into your local grocery store, you see it, and you're like, oh, I want to be like that. But it really does have a big effect on you, and I saw that through her talk.
Wow. One day I was in a women's studies class, and the teacher came out with, this was before we had smartphones to go through, so she came out with a big basket of magazines and just dumped them on the floor in the middle. And she said, all right, I want you to cut out all of the pictures of women and put them in one corner, and cut out all the pictures of men and put them in one corner. And I want you to tell me what the reason why this woman is in this magazine for every picture. And then do the same thing for the men. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, most of the reasons why that woman was in the magazine was because she was beautiful. Whereas the reasons the men were in the magazines was much more diverse, because they were an economic giant, because they were a sports hero, because they were this, that, and the other. And that was a real powerful moment for me. And what she said is, women are bodies, men are minds in our media.
Deeper into that, I've done kind of a process similar to that, but instead of separating by gender, we separated by kind of theme of the photo. So you cut out pictures of women where their bodies were objectified, like if they were in a bikini, or if it was for an ad for a car, yet they were wearing near nothing, like something that doesn't make any sense. And then cut out the pictures of women where they're placed like in the value of their minds or their accomplishments in the magazine for that reason. And the separation was nearly just as drastic, where it was just like there was the pile of women just in close to nothing being objectified was so much larger than women being valued for their minds and their accomplishments. And so I agree that it's completely absurd how women are objectified in magazines, let alone media today.
I remember when Avery actually did this group where at our school we have a week where seniors like organize something for middle schoolers, because it's a middle school and high school school. And so then we got these magazines and then we tore them up because it was all stupid. Like there was no sense to any of it. But I feel like women and girls have a slimmer chance of beauty than, like, it's easier for guys to have a bigger range.
So a slimmer chance of fitting the ideal of beauty. Yeah. Not actual beauty.
Yeah.
And Leela, you go to a different school. So McLean, did Brie come to your school as well, or did
she did? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Actually, so there's a girls' leadership committee at my school. It was formed at the beginning of last year. The principal and the school psychologist reached out to a handful of girls and said, we need to do something. And so they just started, and their one goal was, by the end of the year, we want to do something that has impacted the female community at our school. And what they did was they brought Brie, and that had a real huge impact on all of us.
Wow. And was your was the talk optional or was it mandatory at
It
your
was
school?
optional.
Wow. And how many people went? Like, why was it optional? That's what I'm just curious. I guess it's good that you chose to be there, but what effect do you think that had? Did most people go? I'm curious.
I know a lot of people who didn't go, but there was still, the auditorium was full. There was a huge attendance.
Similar at HP?
Yeah, I think for the most part it was relatively full, but it takes a lot to fill our auditorium, so that said something, that it was like generally full, because there's only, like 700 people that go to our school, so filling an auditorium is kind of hard, even on the best day. So we had a really good turnout, especially for it being optional.
I'm curious, do you think it should have been optional, or do you think it should be part of the curriculum necessary, this type of information?
I definitely think that it's something that every high school student needs to hear. I think people like to believe that this topic is covered in like health class and everything, but it's really not. And what Brie talks about is really much more important than what they really gloss over these things when they're teaching you about it in school. And what Brie says, it's never covered anywhere else, any time else in your whole life. You can go your whole life and never have this realization. So I definitely think that it's extremely important.
In health class, we go over like nutrition, but nutrition is counting calories, how many calories you had that week. Nutrition is not, health and well-being is focused on the food you're eating rather than like how your brain feels and how your mind feels. And I think that we learn about juicing rather than, like appreciating your body and appreciating yourself. And I think there's a real problem with that in our curriculum.
I think it's interesting because my understanding is the reason why they focus on that is because, the obesity rates are like rising in this country, but then I think we forget that it's rising on both ends of the spectrum. It's not just moving on one end, it's actually going to the extremities on both ends, I think.
Yeah.
So there's more people who are unhealthily thin and more people who are unhealthily overweight.
It goes both directions.
Actually, Nathan, so hospitalizations for anorexia between 1999 and 2006, I'm just like calling the statistic forth, there was a 119% increase in hospitalizations for anorexia between 99 and 2006.
Wow. Yeah, it would, and I wonder if it's gone more with all the screens in front of us 100% of the time. We always have access to a screen.
I think that, and you guys can comment on this, I feel like the pressure now on young women has slightly shifted. There's still an enormous body beautiful kind of pressure on women, but that's now accompanied by this kind of pumped up hypersexualizing ideal. So a lot of what we're seeing now is that young women are experiencing their value and feeling like their lovability is somehow intrinsically linked to their sexual availability. And I think some of that is due to the prevalence and the accessibility of porn culture. And porn, unfortunately, is, if you don't have sex education, porn winds up by default becoming that sex education. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's having a very raw impact on young women's burgeoning identities, on their sexual identities. If you look at Peggy Orenstein's book, Girls and Sex, she did a massive study across the country on millennials and their experiences of sex. And the figures were really very tragic in terms of young women, the way that young women relate to their bodies, and what's actually happening with how they're relating with men sexually.
Mm-hmm. It's really scary to see people in middle school sending out nudes because like a guy would ask for them and they don't have that wall of self-confidence to like say no and feel like they're enough to say no.
And you know that this is happening,
Yeah. And wow. People don't see how much it affects the girl. Like the girl can send it and she'd be getting called all these mean names, but the guy has nothing.
No repercussions.
Yeah.
So the responsibility is totally different. Yeah, and the pressure is also really high.
Especially with Snapchat, it makes it a lot easier, but I think, starting in 7th grade was when there was those pressures starting to come up of asking for pictures, and you felt like you would be kind of an outcast if you said no, like you wouldn't be cool anymore. I think insecurities go to a deeper level these days, especially with social media. It's like not just bodily, but like body insecurities and social insecurities kind of are intertwined, because maybe you feel like, oh, if I'm not out there enough with my body, then people won't want to be friends with me. I'm not, attractive as a friend or as a girlfriend or anything. So I think, self-worth is really intertwined with how you feel about your body and how you feel about your physical shape, or if that's what you want to call it.
And once you send it, people don't just judge you because of your because you sent it. It's also they judge you on your body. She doesn't have big enough shoes, so they don't get it, and then they start hurting you even more and tearing you down.
Mm-hmm. And I think the worst part of it is that you feel compelled to send this at all. It's like if somebody, comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want a picture," it's like, okay, who are you? Like why would I,
Yeah.
I think it's really sad that girls feel like they have to do this in order to be seen as real women or interesting as friends or as girlfriends. I think that's the real tragedy.
And it's just such a huge risk once it's out there with social media, it could be everywhere very quickly. And it's shocking that I did not know that this was such a common thing.
It's really become a form of social currency for them. And in the boys' talk, I like to introduce the idea of there are really beautiful things that lie in healthy or sacred masculinity. And one of those things is, if your, sex tends to be physically stronger than another sex, then you actually have in your hands a sacred responsibility. And if you do get sent a nude, what would it be to choose to protect that sacred image instead of sharing it for your own social clout and social gain? So the boys are then introduced to a different idea regarding how they can behave in response to it. But sometimes it is the pressure that the girls are getting from the guys to send the sex, and sometimes the girls are just sending the sex.
Really?
Right? It's happening. Mm-hmm. It's happening both ways.
Wow.
I think also guys have been put into this box of being this emotionless, just kind of guy, I guess. but it's just, they've been also put into this box, but they don't see it as much, or I don't hear them talking about it as much because they don't seem to care as.
Could also be a big taboo. I mean, if it's in some ways it's a little bit insidious, because if you are speaking out for equal rights as a woman, then there's definitely repercussions, and we see that all over the internet. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if as a man you say, I don't, imagine a boy in your high school saying, I don't feel like people respect my emotions. What would be the result of how they might be treated by other boys? And I think it can be hard to even ask for help for a lot of boys, which is sometimes can mean that they'll be less responsible in their relationships with girls because they don't feel very good about themselves in the first place, and it comes out sideways.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why Brie's boy side of the talk is so important, because it introduces, the option that I spoke about earlier. It introduces that option, but for guys, and I think that's an important, realization for people to have.
Do you know what she says to the guys?
Vaguely. I haven't seen the talk. No, I have not seen the talk. But we vaguely know the contents and her point, what she wants to get across, and I think it's really important.
Absolutely. So since seeing the talk, what are you inspired to do about unrealistic standards? What are you inspired to do about more equal relationships between boys and girls, men and women, and transgender people?
After I saw her talk, I was, sitting and I was looking on my Instagram, and Instagram can be a platform for a lot of hate. But I found, I know, but I found pretty quickly, looking at like BOPO tags or body positivity tags, that there's actually another side, and it's a side where, you know, there's a lot of warmth and there's a lot of love and a lot of self-love and love towards others. And I thought, you know, I really need to be part of that, because I didn't know it was, you know, another option.
Hashtag
I know.
BOPO. Right?
Hashtag BOPO.
All right.
And so once I realized I could be a part of that world, I made my own account called Body Posy Avery. And, you know, at first it was really closed to my closest friends because there's a, you know, a personal expression of, you know, where I was at and accepting my body and, you know, kind of putting that out in the world. I didn't really want it to be so public yet. And then I go to a pretty close-knit school, so I opened it up to my school. It's private, so, you know, I could choose who I would take in. I opened it up to my school, you know, kids like Ellen, who were in 7th grade at the time when I did it. And then I pretty soon opened it up to all of Arlington and McLean.
Wow.
Yeah.
It takes some guts.
I know, it's pretty scary, but it turned into not only being a platform for me to share my story, it was a platform for me to share other girls' stories. They girls send in their, you know, posts or a picture and a, you know, a caption under it, and I post it for them, and it's like kind of like just a safe place for them to express themselves without, you know, putting their whole account on the line. So I think, you know, after I found out that, you know, I could be part of this world and I could be part of, you know, a warmer, softer world, as Brie says, I really took it and ran with it and really decided to make a change.
How do you keep yourself safe?
You know, that's a good question. I've kind of accepted, you know, that kids can be pretty mean, and they can, you know, screenshot the pictures, send them around. It's protected to only girls, but girls can also, you know, send that around. So I've kind of just come to terms with that. But the hardest part was really, you know, hearing other girls' stories and having to cope with that, having to handle that, because it can be pretty emotionally heavy when girls are confiding in me. But, you know, I have resources and come to learn, like, when I'm responsible for something and when it's not my responsibility anymore. So I really came to terms with that and figured out my role in all of this. So I think that's how I really get through it.
Sounds like you've done some learning that a lot of adults have not done.
Yeah, it's a lot of internal learning.
Really impressive. And you have a lot of support.
Yeah. My mom, Brie, I go to a therapist because it's pretty important.
With the work you're
for
doing.
Me at least, yeah. And, you know, school counselors I'm a really big advocate for school counselors. And so, yeah, I had a pretty good base.
Wonderful.
When I saw her account, I was really inspired because there's a lot of yourself that you have to put on the line to show other people, like, who you are and what you've gone through. And then she opened it up to everyone, and then you see other girls also going through the same emotions and the same problems, and then you see all the other comments of the girls saying, "You're so great, thank you so much because you've helped me." So she's just as inspiring as Brie, and they're just great people.
By letting your light shine, you give others permission to do the same.
I think the most important part is letting girls not feel so alone. I think that's what I strive to do.
Wow.
And Ellen, you did something pretty amazing as well. Speaking of letting your light shine.
I made a video with my friend Corinna, and she was a great help to it because she really helped me edit and stuff. And we made this video, and we reached out to Avery because we wanted older groups, because we didn't want it just to be middle schoolers, because I feel like people wouldn't understand as much. So then we got a bunch of people, and they held up a sign of what the meanest thing someone said to them.
Right.
And then we give them, after, a poster of them, a compliment, and we see their reaction. And
nice.
It was all about just spreading positivity, not negativity.
Yeah.
I actually saw that video, and it is a very heartwarming video.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can see how happy they were when they opened up the poster or whatever that said something positive about them. Were they opening it for the first time on video?
Yes.
Nice. That's what I thought.
It was moving.
And Leela?
So after Brie's presentation at our school, the Girls Leadership Committee went from being 4 or 5 girls to 20 or 30. I mean, it really had a huge impact on just how we view ourselves, and, you know, this is not okay, and we are going to step up and we are going to do something about it because we can, because everybody has this individual power and this individual potential to use their lives to grow and inspire and to stand up for what you believe in. And so that was really powerful, and kind of relating to Ellen's video, tomorrow actually, as a fun thing that we're doing after school is we are taking car markers, and we're going around to all the girls' bathrooms and writing positive messages on the mirrors.
Nice.
And so it's kind of like you're getting the positive message, and since it's on the mirror, it's like, it's
when you most need it.
Yeah. The inner beauty matters more than the outside.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's amazing that group multiplied, literally.
Yeah.
The girls' empowerment group at your school. Well, does anyone have any last burning thought before we wrap up? Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Ellen.
Okay.
You get to take us out.
Okay. So this is kind of off topic from everything that we talked about, but I also see some of my closest friends and just going through an emotional spiral, or cutting themselves, or just feeling really bad about themselves because of what other people think or say or talk about them. And I just think when people see that, they're like, oh, they just want attention, but the real thing is they need attention if that's what they're thinking, and no one really gets that, so no one helps them. And I think it's really important to help them as a friend.
Absolutely. They need positive attention. And attention that sees more than just the surface. Yeah, absolutely.
Nathan, you closed the last show asking me, what kept me going as an activist, and I can think of no greater example than the embodiments right here.
Yeah.
Such inspiration.
I see why you do it, that's for sure. Well, with that, we're going to have to wrap up, but it was so inspiring for me, illuminating. I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to everything that you guys have shared. Thanks for making me a smarter person.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Youth Can Change the World. May you always find new ways to love and honor your body and your mind, no matter what your gender is.